all probably have a celebrity who instantly pops into mind when I say the phrase, fame can ruin you. For most of us, it's probably someone like Britney Spears or Amy Winehouse. But whoever it is you thought of doesn't really matter as much as the fact that this is a phenomenon which is also applicable to video game franchises and live service games. For celebrities, this can be a result of their inability to handle the lifestyle which comes with being famous, so they reach for unhealthy coping mechanisms such as drugs or alcohol. Or even if they don't, they just go a bit cuckoo in the head. But this doesn't really apply to video games. After all, how would a video game get high on heroin or go full mental patient? That said, there is something that does apply to video games. With increasing popularity, you start to cater to your audience instead of sticking to your authentic self and original vision. But what does any of this have to do with Genshin Impact, you may ask? Genshin Impact is an open-world action RPG released in September of 2020, and with all current development costs included, it holds the title for the most expensive video game to develop, with an insane 700 million USD cost of development. It is also a game which was primarily developed for mobile, which is understandable considering mobile gaming eclipses all other forms of gaming as far as popularity and revenue goes. The game launched strong, with over 20 million downloads in the first 2 months of release, and a steady 3 to 4 million new players every month trying the game ever since. They also made a total of over 5 billion USD revenue during the last 40 or so months, meaning even with the insane costs of development mentioned earlier, they are still well in the green when it comes to the cassiola. Saying the game is anything but a monumental success would be flat out lying. So what exactly do I mean that it got ruined by fame? There are more sides to this story, as with any story worth listening to, so buckle up because we're about to get started. Before I get into how Genshin Impact got progressively worse and worse as a game over time, let me start by giving it a bit of praise. After all, I probably wouldn't bother making such a long ass video about it if it wasn't somehow near and dear to my heart. For some extra context, I actually started playing the game in October of 2023, so my perspective is that of someone who could play through all the content the game has to offer until then back to back, and not someone who started out with 1.0 and got the story and different regions drip fed to them patch by patch. The game starts out incredibly fun. You are thrown into a massive world. You can explore, do quests, follow the main story, solve puzzles, and the list goes on and on. The onboarding process is smooth and gradual. The game won't overwhelm you with a bunch of shit that you will end up forgetting as soon as you close the tutorial message that was trying to explain it to you. And as you keep progressing throughout the game, you unlock more and more that the game has to offer. The early game experience is nothing short of spectacular. Then there are the character designs. Pretty much the selling point for any gacha game, since this is the meat and potatoes of how they make money. And Genshin Impact is pretty much one of the best in the business. The genius behind their diverse roster of characters really boils down to them catering to the sexual fantasies of pretty much every type of person. You want to play as the self-insert badass dude? We got you, brother. You're 15, so you want to play as the self-insert badass teenager? Don't worry, we got you too. Oh, you're a furry? Coming right up. You'd rather play as your waifu? No worries, doesn't matter what you're into, we got something for you. Boobs, asses, petite chicks, cute shy chick, cool outgoing chick, serious workaholic chick, cat girls, ara, you name it, we got it. Oh, you're a pedophile? Don't worry, we got you too, homie, just don't tell anyone about it, you sick fuck. Then there's the story. It is one of the few things which I feel actually got better and better over time. The initial Archon quests from Mondstadt and Liyue feel kind of whatever. The writing is whatever. The plot twists are whatever. The character interactions are whatever. The villains are whatever. Then for Inazuma, while the overall writing is still somewhat on the meh side, the character interactions and general vibes of the story felt a lot better in quality. It was really in Sumeru and most recently in Fontaine that both the story and the writing got a lot better, with the Archon quests, in my opinion, actually coming close to, if not outright being right up there in quality with some of the best storylines in video games. I can already hear you saying, but Dr. Misk, based on what you're telling me, this game sounds fucking rad. What is there not to like about it then? Well, if you insist, I'll get into that right away. So with all that praise I showered the game with, and considering the game is profitable beyond belief, what do I mean the game got progressively worse over time? Not to mention, I've only been playing Genshin since October of 2023. How would I even know how Genshin Impact used to be? While if you are a peanut-brained Reddit updoot enjoyer, it might be too much to comprehend this idea. But all versions of Genshin Impact are still present in the game right now, in the form of explorable areas, quests, as well as playable characters. Besides a few outliers such as the pre-nerfed Tartaglia boss fight or pre-buffed Zhongli, Genshin Impact never really changes things once they are added to the game. As such, a zone that was added at launch has the exact same quests, puzzles, and enemies as they did back in version 1.0, and the character that was added at launch pretty much still has the same exact moveset, multipliers, and design as they did back in version 1.0. So we can pretty much directly compare the different versions of Genshin Impact without having actually played them by simply playing through the game, exploring the areas, and trying the different characters. Sure, you don't get to compare the different limited time events which were ongoing during specific patches, but that is not really what the game is about. The characters, the exploration, and the story are the main focus, all of which are still present in the game, unchanged from when they were initially added. Cool, but what the fuck is the point you're trying to make, you ask? Well, as someone who played through and has done 100% or close to 100% exploration in every single area, finished every Archon quest and most side quests, consistently 36-starred the Spiral Abyss after just first 2 months of playing the game, and has a variety of characters from pretty much every era of Genshin patches, I can pretty confidently say that the more I progressed throughout the game, after a certain point, and that certain point being Inazuma, the dumber and dumber everything got. Let's break down both of these different aspects separately, starting with puzzles and then getting back to characters after. Puzzles at the start of the game were all pretty easy. Usually it's just use element to light up this elemental monument, or use fire to light torch. Pretty basic stuff. Then in Liyue, some puzzles got a bit more complex, but generally speaking, they were still on the easy side. Then I set foot in Inazuma, and I'm actually required to use my brain beyond put the circle-shaped wooden toy into the circle-shaped hole, Jimmy, in quite a few puzzles. Some of the combat encounters are genuinely interesting, the exploration is made more interesting with the introduction of grapple points and wave riders. Overall, a big step up from the initial areas. Then after Inazuma, we go to the Sumeru rainforest, and the exploration feels convoluted to say the least. A lot of multi-layered areas, but some fun tools to help you traverse them. But the one thing I noticed is that the puzzles I encountered were all far less interesting and brain juice demanding than the ones back in Inazuma. The only ones I even remember being anything more than "Here's the glowing spot, bozo!" in the Sumeru rainforest are the ones where you have to walk around the garden to grow grass wherever you step, and then you have to not step on the same spot twice. And then we get to the desert, and the puzzles are once again basically collect 1 room with the potatoes, 2 rooms with the cannoli, and then 2 rooms with the gabagool sandwich, and then put them all into this big dildo, Tone. And match the rooms on the small stones and the big ones on the big stones. And I figured, well, maybe Fontaine will pick up the pace. But boy was I wrong. The puzzles in Fontaine pretty much all boil down to hit the dark glowing orb with light energy and the light glowing orb with dark energy, or some variation of connect 3 dots. The difficulty peaked in Inazuma and fell off a cliff as soon as we left the islands. And I get it, some of the puzzles there were genuinely difficult, but why not add a few of those to each region instead of flat out removing any difficult puzzle from the game? Well, I actually know exactly why, and it all circles back to a point I made near the beginning of the video, but I'll get back to that later, I promise. I won't keep you waiting much longer. So that was puzzles, but what about character designs? I don't mean their visual designs here. Most of those got better and better as the game progressed, but just character kits in general. There is good reason a lot of the early characters are beloved in Genshin Impact, and still to this day have very dedicated, albeit somewhat bitter mains. And I'm not talking about the broken top tier off-field damage dealers, like Xiangling, Xingqiu, or Official. I'm speaking more about the on-fielders, such as Razor, Tartaglia, Diluc, or Keqing. While every character in the game is bound by the limitations of having access to basically 4 types of moves: a normal attack chain, a charged attack, an elemental skill, and an elemental burst. The early on-field DPS characters all make use of these in very unique and innovative ways, giving them interesting playstyles and rotations. Diluc, for example, has a 3-part elemental skill, which allows you to use any other moves in between them as long as you don't run out of time to cast the next skill in the sequence. Keqing has an elemental skill which can be recast to move you to it, acting as a gap closer towards enemies, but again, can be used in a way such that you weave moves in between the two casts, allowing for interesting rotations where you either cast your ultimate in between the two skills or swap out to a different character entirely before swapping back and then casting your skill a second time. And then Razor has 2 versions of his elemental skill, depending on whether you hold or press the button, and using his burst actually resets the skill cooldown. I don't own Tartaglia, so I don't know what exactly he does, but I'm pretty sure he has like 2 different forms and 2 types of elemental bursts depending on whether you are in melee or ranged form, both with different use cases. This means all 4 of these characters play very differently from each other, but also very differently from pretty much every other DPS character who was subsequently released. Later released characters, sadly, are not as innovative, even if many of them are stronger than the initial few. While their skill descriptions may be similar in length to the essays I was tasked to write in after-school detentions for being a bad kid who always misbehaved, really most later released on-field characters' kits and playstyles boil down to one of the 2 following rotations. Rotation 1. Press burst. Press skill. Mash normal attack or charged attack. Rotation 2. Press skill. Press burst. Mash normal attack or charged attack. So let me get this straight. DPS characters released in versions 1.0 and a few patches after that all have unique ways of using elemental skill and burst in their rotations, but those who came later down the line all pretty much follow the exact same formula? Well, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And you could argue that characters like Alhaitham are different and have more complex rotations, but really, he's so OP that if you get him on field, press burst, press skill, and then mash normal attack until you have to swap out to your supports and off-fielders to reapply their skills, you'll do just fine and 36-star the Abyss just as well, so I don't think he really counts. So now that we covered both characters and puzzles, and how they kept getting dumbed down gradually as the game received newer and newer patches, why is that the case? Shouldn't the game get more and more interesting instead of simpler and simpler as the time goes on? Well, my friends, let me finally give you the answer you have been waiting for, as to how popularity and fame ruined Genshin Impact. So now that we know a bit more about Genshin and its progression throughout its numerous patches, let's delve into why the game kept getting progressively simpler and simpler, and what this has to do with its increasing popularity. For this, we have to understand the actual demographics of the Genshin Impact player base. Every single month, the game consistently gains 2 to 3 million new players. It currently has an estimated daily peak player count of 17 million and over 60 million active players per month. In order to cater to such an insane number of people, your main focus has to be adding just endless slop to your game, because that is going to be what the vast majority of the user base can actually enjoy without getting confused or gatekept from understanding and enjoying the content. It's also a good indication of why Paimon, as adorable as she is basically just there in cutscenes to repeat everything happening so that if you didn't understand it the first time, maybe the second time around you'll get it. All of this can be perfectly explained with the bell curve of the IQ distribution of the general population. Most people will fall in the middle, with a few outliers who are either really smart or really dumb, but generally speaking, most people are gonna be in this average zone. As such, for a game to become insanely popular, it has to cater to these average Joes, midwits, or whatever else you might want to call them. But this is actually quite a recent modern phenomenon. Why is it that older games didn't have to cater to everyone, and could double down on a certain niche and just be successful there? Well, for that, we have to look at how gaming got more and more popular with the advent of smartphones becoming more and more popular. Not only did mobile gaming overtake console and PC gaming by a massive margin by now, but as time goes on, these smartphones are more and more affordable, and a bigger and bigger segment of the population is going to have access to them. This phenomenon is not only true for video games either, Just taking one look at YouTube, social media, or anywhere on the internet really, and we can easily see that the convergence point for everything is just going to be slop to be eaten up by all the average Joes. And if you're an average Joe, there's no shame in that. Almost all of us are. I'm just telling you why things are going the way they are, and why Genshin Impact difficulty peaked with Inazuma, with every subsequent patch adding simpler and simpler content. Do you agree with this analysis? Did you get mad that I called you a slop-eating average Joe? Let me know all about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Or a dislike if you hated it. And while I will mostly be covering Wuthering Waves in my future videos, I will definitely have similar style videos probably once a week or so. So if you want to hear more of my yapping, do subscribe to the channel. I'm Dr. Misk. Until next time. Peace.